All right, Facebook. Peace and blessings, Sister Mila. I am excited. It is the last Monday of the month, and I was just kind of waiting to go on my page so that I could make it public so that I could view um, the comments. So it is August 25th, 2022, and I'm here at Restoration New Direction Culture Center. And today we're going to be discussing one of my newfound favorites. But to start off, I want to recognize two of our ancestors today. Um, One is, let me see if I can share my screen. The great Walter Payton. So, Walter Payton was born on this day in 1954 in Columbia, Mississippi. Did y'all know that he was a Mississippi native? He was one of the greatest to ever play the game of football. And after high school, he originally committed to Kansas State, but decided to take his gift and talents to Jackson State University, the Jackson State University, as most people here say. And we all know that it is an HBCU. And he went on to enjoy a great career, NFL career with the Chicago Bears. And his untimely transition brought life to his words. And this is one of my favorite quotes. When you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. And if you have ever visited the campus of Jackson State University, you will know that the athletic facility is named after him. He is one of my favorites. Yesterday we viewed a video of him and where he stated he had, I think it was 46 or 64. I may be transposing the numbers, but he stated that he had many offers, uh, athletic offers, from ranging from football to basketball to baseball. And the reason he chose Jackson State was because his mother told him that if you are for sale, then once you're used up, they'll find another product. And so I'm just kind of paraphrasing what he said in the video. You can do a YouTube search, Walter Payton, and it'll bring it up. The clip is only a little over a minute, but I love to hear him speak because his nickname was Sweetness, and his voice is very soft, and you just have to listen very closely uh, to hear what he has to say. But Walter Payton is one of my favorites, and I remember my cousin Tootie, Angela Price, said. Yeah, she knew he was from Mississippi. That's why she became a Chicago Bears fan, and he is one of her favorite football players. So we want to salute and remember our grand ancestor Walter Payton on this day. Ashe. So the next person I want to remember is dear to everyone's heart, not just us Mississippians, but everyone, because um, facts and documents have been found regarding our beloved brother Emmett Till. He was also he also entered the physical realm on this day in 1941. And there's a video that I want to share because it will make us pause. It will give us all pause to remember the system of brutality uh, that caused his death. And then once we look at this and we understand the history and we look at what's going on today, we'll see the parallels. So I'm going to share that video with you all right now.
The brutal murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till remains one of the darkest moments in the civil rights era. On August 20th, 1955, the Chicago team went to visit relatives in Money, Mississippi. While there, Till and a group of friends went into a store to buy candy. Unaware of the racial tone in the Mississippi Delta, Till spoke to a white female storekeeper in a manner she deemed offensive. On August 28, 1955, the storekeeper's husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, abducted Till at gunpoint from his great-uncle's home. They drove him to a shed, where they took turns torturing and beating him with a pistol. The pair then drove the battered team to the edge of the Tallahatchie River. There they ordered him to remove his clothes and shot him in the head. Then they attached a heavy fan to his neck and rolled his body into the river. On August 31st, 1955, the body of Emmett Till was discovered by two young boys. Heartbroken and grief-stricken by the brutality of her son's death, Mamie Till Bradley defiantly held an open casket funeral in Chicago for her son. She even sent pictures of his disfigured body to newspapers and magazines, saying the whole nation had to bear witness to this. Blacks, including young kids like myself, saw this horrendous picture in Jet magazine and other black publications. In September 1955, Bryant and Milam were indicted for Emmett Till's murder. During the three-day trial, prosecutors presented testimony from Till's great-uncle and Willie Reed, an African-American sharecropper, who overheard Bryant and Milam torturing Till. On September 23, 1955, after deliberating for just over 1 hour, the all-white male jury found the defendants not guilty. 7 years after their acquittal, one juror admitted during an interview that most of the jurors believed Bryant and Milam were guilty, but acquitted them because the mandatory punishment of life in prison or death seemed too harsh to impose on white men for killing a black boy.
So y'all heard that an all-white male jury said that life in prison or the death penalty was too harsh of a sentence to administer to white men accused of killing a black boy. And so fast forward to modern day and just look at the same circumstances. When white men kill one of our beloved, what happens? What happens? Most of the times they aren't even charged. They're granted immunity if they're a police officer. So we have to understand our story so that we can understand, well, we have to know our story in order to understand our present and plan for the future, right? And so if you have been keeping up with Black Liberation Movement and what we've been doing and what's going on in Mississippi, you will know that the original arrest warrant was found in the LaFleur County Courthouse recently. And when you look at it, in fact, we have a copy of it. When one looks at the original warrant, I don't know if you all can see it. I will share my screen, but I want to hold this up. It'll show you the original warrant, and it'll have a check mark by the names J.W. Milam, Roy Bryant, and no check mark by Mrs. Roy Bryant. And then if you go over to the next page, there's a note written that says Mrs. Roy Bryant not found in my county, and it's signed by G.O. Smith, the sheriff, I assume. And so this warrant was found And so she was never arrested for her part in the crime, although she was listed on the warrant. So those of us here on the ground are demanding justice for our dear brother Emmett Till, and especially we want to send the great energy and vibes because today is his day. Today is the day that he entered the physical realm in 1941. He would be 81 years old today, and most of us know someone that is 81 years old. Hell, she's still alive. She's still alive. So, our dear brother could still be among us had it not been for this demonic, right, Sister Miller, demonic old witch, right? And so we just want to remember our dearly beloved brothers, Walter Payton and Emmett Till, on their day. Ashe, 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 yo. Greetings to everyone who has come in. Peace, Sister Naki, Brother Carl, Sister Beth, Brother Devon. It is an honor to have you all viewing my live tonight. I thank you all for tuning in. So I did want to remember them. We remembered him here yesterday as well, because it is a sobering reality, especially when you watch that video of our dear brother Emmett Till. We tell the family he not only belongs to y'all, he belongs to us. He belongs to us because it was his horrific murder that sparked the civil rights movement. And so the history of how Mississippi was intimately involved uh, is something. Because as I say, the more I learn and live, the longer I live here, the more I learn about this state and how important it was, and is in the development of this country and this world. So I say. So I want to move on to talk about one of my, as I stated in the description, newfound sheroes. I had ordered this set of cards, African American History Knowledge cards, for our scholars here at Ashe Academy. And as I was looking through them, I came across a mama, Fanny Jackson Coppin. Fanny Jackson Coppin, had never heard of her. She was an educator, and I was reading the information on the back of the card, and this sentence spoke out to me. She was committed to educating the masses of newly freed Black people and to dispelling the myth that Blacks could not learn because of intellectual inferiority. Could not learn. She was committed to dispelling this myth. And so I learned a little bit about her, but then one morning as I was lying in bed meditating, and I was thinking about some of my other heroines, some of my other sheroes that I look up to and respect immensely. One of them being Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who I did a live on back in March during her month, and the other is Mama Marva Collins. I have tremendous respect for those mamas, and there are some others, but I put Mama Fanny Jackson Coppin in that circle because as I'm not an educator per se, I am not a trained educator, I'll say that. I am a librarian by trade, and it's something that I love. It's my mission, passion, and purpose. And, because of that, we have the Oasis Literary Center, the Black Liberation Movement, and now Shea Academy that's committed to teaching our children. And so she just started really being in my spirit. I started thinking about her a lot. And so I was like, let me see if there's any literature about her or anything that she has written so that I can, become more knowledgeable about who she was. I like to study our ancestors because they did leave clear instruction for us. And I wanted to learn from her because she was committed to teaching our people. And so I came across a book that she had written. Now, y'all bear with me because I have a problem pronouncing this word, reminiscences of school life and hints on teaching. So this is a book that she had written, And so, yeah, I'm an advocate of the public library, just because if you request books, they have access to books that they may not have in their system, but they can get them from other systems. So this book came from Mississippi State University Library, and it's part of a series. So the book, her original book that she wrote, was published in 1913, and I'm sure that there's a copy that I can obtain somewhere on. I probably had to go to Amazon. I know some of y'all, we had some feelings about that, but um, I want a personal copy of her book because I really need to mark it. I really need to underline some things that are said in this book because it was written in 1913, y'all, and there are parts in here that we need to pay attention to. But before I get into that, I want to tell y'all a little bit about who she was because there's an introduction, there's a general introduction written by a series introduction, excuse me, written by Henry Louis Gates and uh, another person. Let me see what her name was, Jennifer Burton, that kind of gives a reason why this her book was chosen to be part of this series, African American Women Writers, 1910 to 1944. And then there's also uh, an introduction to her book by Shelley P. Haley. And I read both of them, and I was kind of put back by Shelley Haley's introduction because it seems like they always take our best, Mama Fanny, um, Mama Ida B. Wells, Mama Harriet Tubman, Mama Sojourner Truth, and want to put a feminist spin on them. And she was reaching in her introduction. I assessed after reading her introduction and then after reading her Mama Fanny's words that she clearly wrote herself, I felt like, they always try to put a spin on it instead of really understanding what our great ancestors did as far as nation building and as far as the collective of Black people. Stop trying to pit them against Black men because that was not the case. So that is my own complaint, and I want to tell y'all a little bit about Mama Fanny in my words. And I have them written down because I don't want to leave anything out because it's such a wonderful biography. Mama Fanny was born enslaved on October 15th, 1837 in Washington, D.C. And so, yeah, I had to look that up because I was like, Washington was a slave-holding uh, territory because it's not a state, right? District. So I looked that up, and of course it was. Um, she gained her freedom when her aunt was able to purchase her for $125. Mama Fanny then moved to Newport, Rhode Island, and worked as a servant slash domestic to George and Elizabeth Calvert, where she was, quote, allowed to go to school when not at work. Now, she could not go to school when on wash day, she could not go to school on cleaning day, and she could not go to school on ironing day. But despite those odds, she was determined and deliberate to become educated. So she excelled in school, of course, and it was at the Rhode Island State Normal School that Mama Fanny was inspired to teach and made up her mind to attend Oberlin College in Ohio. Oberlin was one of the first colleges to admit Black people and the first to admit women. So Mama Fanny began her studies there in 1860. And this is what she had to say um, about Oberlin when she first attended. She said, the faculty did not forbid a woman to take the gentleman's course, but they did not advise it. There was plenty of Latin and Greek in it, and as much mathematics as one could shoulder. Now I took a long breath and prepared for a delightful contest. All went smoothly until I was in the junior year at the college. Then one day, the faculty sent for me, omnibus request, and I was not slow in obeying it. It was a custom in Oberlin that 40 students from the junior and senior classes were employed to teach the preparatory classes. As it was now time for the juniors to begin their work, the faculty informed me that it was their purpose to give me a class. But I was too distinctly understand, that if the pupils rebelled against my teaching, they did not intend to force it. So she was a black woman, right? And they had white students. So if they came in and said, "Hold up, we don't want this woman teaching us," the faculty, she would not have a support system. But she goes on to write. Fortunately for my training at the normal school and my own dear love of teaching, though there was little surprise on the faces of some when they came into the class and saw the teacher, there were no signs of rebellion. The class went on increasing in numbers until it had to be divided, and I was given both divisions. One of the divisions ran up again, but the faculty decided that I had as much as I could do, and it would not allow me to take any work. When I was within a year of graduation, an application came from a friend's school in Philadelphia for a colored woman who could teach Greek, Latin, and higher mathematics. The answer was, "We have the woman, but you must wait a year for her." And so she went on to graduate from Oberlin, and then she became a high school teacher at the Institute for Colored Youth in Philadelphia, which is now dun, 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 Cheney State, Cheney University and HBCU. And our great brother Akil is a math instructor at Cheney. Yay! So she was appointed the principal in 1869, the first black woman. So, this is great because we talk about black girl magic right now. No, 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 no. That is black girl magic because they did it without this, quote, integrated, assimilated world. So she worked there until 1906. And so in the introduction, she the writer states that when she was appointed president of the college, there was this big rift between her and the gentleman Octavius Cato, and he said that he was not going to work under a woman. And just in the introduction, you would have thought that men, were just so defined against women. But when you read Mama Fanny's words, she gives him much love. And she says, "Well, I was the president of the girls, and he was the president of the boys." And it looked like it was a great nurturing relationship. So I was like, man, this is why it is so important. If you can get primary sources, if you can read the words of people, that is so much better. Because as Emma Wally Mubaridi says, everything is political. Everything is political. And as Mama Toni Morrison said, books are political, right? Books can change your mind. You could think one thing and you could read something and you could be like, what? But everything is political. And I just remembered those words when I was reading this book, because I was really getting angry in the introduction when she was trying to make the men, black men, the enemy of us as black women. And then when you read Mama's Fanny's words, it was not so. So she went on to marry Levi Coppin in 1881, who was a Baptist. No, he was a pastor, a preacher with the AME Church, I believe. And she would travel with him as a missionary, and that is part of the book. And in 1926, she transitioned in 1913, and in 1926, a Baltimore teacher training school was named the Fanny Coppin Normal School, and now it is Coppin State University. So her legacy is linked to two HBCUs, standing institutions. So I really want to salute Mama Fanny Jackson Coppin. So the book is the kind of divided into three areas. Uh, in the first part, she gives an autobiography, a sketch of her life, and she speaks to remembering her grandma always praying for her offspring, and she often wondered what that word offspring meant, and and so she would go on to learn what offspring meant, and she talked a little bit about what I've already stated in my biography. She was excellent in Greek and Latin, and she was an excellent mathematician as well. And you will find that in the second part of the book when she starts speaking about um, education and how to teach different subjects. Because I was reading and I was like, wow, some of these problems and some of these instructions, man, our ancestors really had it going on. This educational system right now has been really, quote, dumbed down. If you read her words, this book was written in 1912, it was published in 1913. So when you start reading some of the sentences and definitions and some of the arithmetic problems, you'll be like, whoa. I was like, had to read those things 2 and 3 times. But anyway, she goes on to talk about how to teach. You know, it's hints on teaching. Reminiscences of School Life. I know I botched that word up. And hints on teaching. So she talks about elementary education, and she states that this is the most important. This is the most important period of a child's life because this is where habits are formed and tastes cultivated, which may guide him in the pursuit of knowledge and happiness in after life. And she says on page 40 that I fear that the reason that so many are unable to keep up when they begin the higher studies is because they never mastered the elementary principles. And that is something that Marva Collins stated as well. You know, she goes on. Marva Collins tells us, word up, that you have to be able to spark a child's interest in education, and Mama Fanny says the same thing. So I was really I had to write those notes down, and I really wanted to write in this book, y'all, but it's a Mississippi State Library book, so I'm gonna have to get my own because these words that she writes are still relevant to this day. And so that is why I'm so thankful that I came across her and her work. On page 41, she says, never let the word dumb be used in your class or anything said disrespectful of parents or guardians who may have helped the child. If the teacher has the questions or the review well selected, they can be quickly given out, and no one division has to wait for the other. So she was just giving tips on how to teach different subjects and how to divide your class up so to keep them engaged. And one of the things she says is you had to you had to have ingenuity to be an effective teacher. And so, a lot of times I think through the years, uh, we miss out on being effective. Okay, we just want to get in there and do whatever the curriculum has us to do. Effective is not even in our periphery, right? So I thank y'all for y'all engagement. And I'm gonna look at the comments in a minute. I want to finish up. I don't want to be very long, but I encourage you all, if you can get a copy of this book, to do so and to read it on your own. Okay, on page 42, she says, I do not see how a teacher can succeed well without ingenuity, because ways of finding means to an end must often be discovered by the teacher. It has been said that not only from the elementary classes, but also from the higher classes, those that drop out do so from the want of better elementary training. And so, that spoke to me because as an educator here at Ashe, I'm always trying to think of creative ways to reach our children. I have my granddaughter here with me, and I'm always trying to figure out what can I do to spark their interest, because they have so many distractions now, that even I didn't have growing up. The devices, the electronic devices, technology is a blessing and a curse, y'all, because a lot of times we aren't using technology to learn. We're using it for entertainment. And so we have to be the gatekeepers and balance that out for our children. But I love this book because, as with any classic, it's a classic because it still has something to say, right? It still has something to teach us. There's still value in what she says. So the next chapter is methods of instruction. And this is really where, how do we teach? What do we use? Do we use a blackboard? Do we use a textbook? Do we use pencil and paper? So she was very big on reviewing. She uh, suggests that you divide your class in half and you take one half and let them work problems on pencil and paper and put the other half up on the chalkboard and let them work out problems. And as they're working these problems, you walk around as a teacher and see where they're struggling so that you can know how to deliver and how to teach according to who is where. And I know now with larger classrooms, there may be a bit of a problem, but I think that is a great idea. And that's one of the things that I'm going to try to incorporate here at our Shea Academy because we work with different age groups. Our ages range from 2 to 12. And so creating assignments and engaging material for those age groups is a challenge, but it's a great challenge because there's that African proverb that says, when one teaches to learn. So not only am I teaching, I'm learning as well. I'm learning about them and I'm learning about myself. Um, so there was a passage that I wanted to read, and I have to find it. It's on page 46, where she says, the correction by the teacher coming immediately after the work is done. So she's saying in this passage that when the student is doing the work and you see an error, you don't correct it then. You wait because you don't want to get off task. And she says the correction by the teacher coming immediately after the work is done is very helpful to those being examined. It saves the teacher from carrying the work home and having to go over it all by himself. And besides, the pupils get far more benefit from this cooperative education, cooperative correction, as it may be called. And I agree with that because a lot of times, a lot of teachers get burnt out because they have to take tests home and grade them at home and things of that nature. So, I know that we are living in a different time with classroom size may not permit it, but we need to do as much as possible in the classroom so that we can engage our students, right? So, the next couple of chapters is like on behavior. And I know this is a hot topic in today's age because a lot of educators, a lot of teachers complain a lot about the children's behavior. And so these two chapters were really interesting to me. And on page 51, to start with diagnosis and discipline, I want to read this entire passage because I thought, how can we tweak that to fit today's classroom? She writes, it is possible for the teacher to notice who those are in the class who do not care for learning what we have to give them. And the question to ask ourselves is, why? Are the lessons too hard or are they too long? Is the child well? Above all, does he seem to pass from one to another part of study with ease and comfort to himself, or is he troubled and uncertain? Does he often give excuses for staying away, and does he fail to get the meaning of what we are trying to teach him? When he fails in his lessons, does the teacher let the parent or guardian know, and how is this information supposed to be received at his home? I have heard of a case where whenever the child failed in his lessons, word was sent to his father, who gave him no dinner and locked him in the cellar. Would this punishment incline the child to love his studies or to get them any better? On the contrary, would he not hate them and be glad when he is through with them? We should remember that punishments do not correct, they harden. For this reason, we should try to find out what the real trouble is and then what will best make up for it. And I love that because we had to we had to understand that our children are human. right? They are human. And she goes on to write that. She says, never, on 55, she says, you should never deprive a child of recess. Object of punishment, that's the chapter. You should never deprive a child of recess. He is not a block of wood. He needs fresh air and water, and he will not be in a condition to recite unless he has time for that. Some teachers think they haven't punished enough unless they have taken all of his recess. This is a great mistake. To take a child's lunch from him is a great mistake, and there is no use in attempting to teach a hungry child. So that has so many implications right there because a lot of children come to school hungry. And so, like she said, there is no use in attempting to teach a hungry child. And then you want to take his recess. I know here, that's the first thing they do is take the recess. I'm like, okay, so what makes you think that that's going to work? So, like I said, this book was written in 1913 and it's still timely, right? Uh, she says, remember all the time that you are dealing with a human being whose needs are like your own. And I remember Brother Akil saying that once in an interview he was doing, that our children have been dehumanized. And so when you dehumanize someone, you don't care how you treat them. But we have to remember that these children, our children, are humans just like us. And they deserve the best, just like any other child, right? So on page 59, she talks about moral instruction. Now, Mama Fanny was a Christian, so she's going to speak from that point of view. However, I do think that there has to be some type of moral code in the Black community. You know, I hate this thing about we don't have. There are some elders that we don't have to respect because they're older. That's a slippery slope. Every person deserves a measure of respect, right? So we had to teach our children to respect people because first of all, you have to respect yourself. And if you don't respect yourself, then there certainly you aren't going to respect others, and then it's just a cycle. So we had to have some type of moral code for our children, right? Um, on page 59, she writes, uh, that they use, music and they use tunes to help them stay on some type of moral code. And I wrote this down because she speaks to music and how music can really carry energy and set the tone. She says, however pretty a tune is, if it doesn't carry beautiful words, we should not choose it, right? And then she goes on to talk about books. So y'all know I was like writing all this down when she talked about books because, like I said, Mama Tony told us that books are political, right? She says the books which our children read should also be carefully looked into. And so behind me, you see our library here at Restoration. These books are safe. They have been handpicked by me. I know I am a advocate of the public library, but if you have small children, you need to go in there and you need to be their guide because what we live in a day and age, librarians are big on uh, reading, the freedom to read, and totally against censorship. But as parents, we have the right to censor what our children read. And so I really cannot stress enough to be a um, aware parent of what your children are reading. All right. So we should look into them. We should always be sure to gift books. When we had our Kwanzaa program, what I did was for Zawadi, the gifts, I gave each child a book. And I tried to give each child, each scholar a book that fit their personality. And that is one thing that I love to do. I love to give books. So she said that a child should be encouraged to make his own little library case. And ingenious young people can soon make a very presentable library case. Studies in history, English, French, etc., natural history, and poetry, which children love so much, can also be among the books. And then she goes on to talk about how in the school she was working, they collected a penny a week from their students, and then they would give them to different charities and different organizations. And I thought that was great, because it give them a sense of really helping someone less fortunate to them. And a lot of them weren't like what we call, in a high socioeconomic status, but they gave of what they could have. And then when they worked during the summer, they saved so that they can contribute to different organizations. She goes on to talk about good manners, and how that is taught. Teachers can teach good manners by what we say, how we act. She said that when a student was disrespectful to her, she would go up and say, "Have I ever talked to you like that?" Because she knew she hadn't. And it would instantly convict that student. And maybe they didn't apologize that day, but once they had time to think about it, they would come back and apologize to her. She's stressed. Don't deal with a child out of anger and frustration. Think about it, calm down a little bit, and then go to that child. And so I think a lot of this advice is very timely for today. And so she goes on to talk about how to teach the different subjects. And I got to tell you, when I was reading the chapters on spelling, reading, and in English, I was like, some of these Facebook social media grammar police need to read this, because I, I do I do know the importance of using the correct grammar and writing correctly and all of that. But we all know that English is the bastard language. And she kind of talks about that a little bit in the book. She was like, these type of words come from Old English, these type of words come from German, these type of words come from French, and then the other ones are just kind of made up. So it's difficult to teach the English language to people who are already have been purposely kept ignorant, because not only did she teach at the school, she taught at night newly freed enslaved people. So she was very big on teaching correct English. And so in the chapter on math, y'all, I was like, okay, our ancestors were literally geniuses, because the instruction that she writes in this book on how to teach math, and she says a master of the multiplication table can be so creative in the ways that they teach math. I was like amazed at some of the problems that she was used as examples. And this was in 1913. So when I tell you that the curriculum has really been dumbed down, it has been dumbed down, because y'all, this was a they had a very aggressive curriculum at the Institute for Colored Youth. Um, I don't know of any adults um that could like be like, okay, let me look at this and let me really try to figure out some of these math problems, because they were tough. I know Brother Kill probably could, but for the average person, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Um, there in how to teach grammar, she came up with this really nice little poem on remembering the parts of speech, because she breaks down the parts of speech. She breaks down how to use verbs, the tenses, how to use pronouns, all that when she writes about how to teach grammar, how to teach geography. She speaks on how to be creative, and some of this can be used in present day. I feel like she talks a lot about map making, which will lead to other topics of discussion about geography, which is what Marva Collins says. One idea should spark another, should spark another, and so she has really great ideas about how to do that in this book as well. So then the last part, well, the second part of the book is her travels abroad, because she was invited to visit um, London. She was invited to go to a foreign missionary society meeting in London, and she doesn't speak very much about that. She just talks about she was nervous, and but at the end at the conference she spoke, because she was offended by one of the ministers there, white ministers, who said, "Well, why do women have to have a place speaking in the church?" And she was like, "Because we had something to say." She said, I'm respectful of the pulpit. I would never want to speak from behind the pulpit, but she said that if I had something to say, I should be respected as someone knowledgeable enough to say that. And then the next chapter is her visit with her husband to South Africa as missionaries. Now, remember, this was in the 1900s. I think this was in 1902, and there was a system of apartheid then. And she states that the women there were very receptive because they wanted their children to learn. And she stated that they were at the mercy of their interpreters. I thought that was really interesting. But they were being watched the whole time because, of course, the white power structure was very nervous about other black people coming in talking to the natives there. But she said that why wouldn't they be? She said because when you have been kept purposely ignorant and then someone comes in and starts teaching you and you have the ability to learn for yourself and you see how hypocritical these people are saying that they're Christians but they aren't practicing Christian values, who wouldn't be afraid of that? But yeah, so that was a pretty interesting chapter, and she actually spoke more on that trip to Cape Town than she did about her trip to London because of course she was in the motherland, and she says that my trip to Africa was where life began. And so when I'm sure when they landed in Cape Town that she felt a sense of home, a sense of belonging. So I really enjoyed reading that chapter. The last part two, is some biographical sketches of teachers, graduates, and undergraduates of the Institute for Colored Youth. And I'm still reading this, but she is speaking highly of some of the people that she worked with and some of her students and what they would go on to do in life. But, the quote I shared when I planned to go live is like she said, she just had this spirit of learning so that she could go back and teach her people. It was something that was deeply rooted in her. And I had that feeling a lot when I wake up, especially after summer camp. And let me give a shout out to Sister Mila and Brother Carl who are on this broadcast, and Sister Angela and Sister Sade and my son, our warrior son, Brother Jahi, Brother Patrick, Sister Simone, Sister Catherine for coming through, Sister Leslie for coming through. Um, I was just overjoyed and so thankful. Asante Sana for to all of you who helped make Ashe Academy what it is. I know our scholars got a lot out of it. Yesterday, Scholar Comfort was passing out notes to everybody, just talking, giving us thanks. Glad to know you. This is what you mean to me. And I know that that's where it came about because of the summer camp. So I just wanted to share a little bit about Mama Fanny Jackson Coppin with you all because so many of our great people are overlooked. She was such an inspiration to other great women, and I wrote them down. Mary Church Terrell, who has roots in Memphis, Tennessee. Her father is Robert Church. If you ever been to Africa in April, you know it's at the Robert Church Park in Memphis down by the FedEx Forum. I learned about Robert Church in the book Black Fortunes when he bought a lot of real estate down in the Beale Street area um, because of the yellow fever epidemic. He was able to buy a lot of property, but he had a daughter, Mary Church Terrell, and she was an activist and she was an educator as well. She attended Oberlin University as well. But she was Mama Fanny was an inspiration to Mama Nanny Helen Burroughs. She was an educator, and she was also inspiration to Mama Annie Julia Cooper. And if you follow Baba Imawala Bugarudi, he shares a lot of quotes from Mama Anna Julia. And she also attended Oberlin University in Ohio. And so, as I stated, Mama Fanny Jackson Coppin has been a great inspiration to me, along with Mama Dr. Frances Cress Wilson and Mama Margaret Collins, as I continue my journey to teach our children to be able to define and create their own reality, I will continuously look and be guided by the great ancestors. There's so many, so many. And as I learn, you all will learn as well. I say. Thank you for tuning in. Next month, August 29th, I will be sharing and reading this book, Issy's Awakening, by our sister Akusa. Sister Akusa. And she will be joining me as well. So we can talk about her book and we can talk about how she purposely chose to go back to school to become a teacher, an educator. And because um, I want to give us the inspiration to be effective with our children. Her passion, some of the posts I've seen her make about what it means to her to be a teacher of these young minds, to shape young minds, have been so heartfelt. And so her husband has sent me this book a couple months ago, and so I was like, I want to ask. And when I read her post about, I went back to school to become a teacher, and this is why, I was like, I gotta have her on so that we can talk about that because we need to be passionate about being effective. And so next month I will have Sister Akusa on, and we'll be talking about Izzy's Awakening. Now, I will leave her name in the chat so that if you want to purchase the book, she can give you more information on how to purchase this book, um, and so that you can join the discussion with us. And y'all, I had such great goals and aspirations of my reading this summer, but I have just gotten kind of behind on my reading. So I'm still reading this novel, The Merciless Ones. The first one was The Gilded Ones. It's a book of fiction. It's a kind of a fantasy fiction, young adult. Really great, really great. It's set in a country in Africa, and it's about some goddesses, women who have power and how they use their power. And so it's really good. It's a really colorful, magical book. I've gotten into a lot of fantasy, science fiction lately, because there is it's just it's so you have to use your imagination to think about these things being a possibility. So it kind of expands your mind. So again, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be starting back with our critical reading time here at the center on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 o'clock. So if you are in the area and you want to send your children up here, please do so because Kenzie always asks me, Gigi, is anybody else going to be there? Gigi, is anybody else going to be there? And so you will find that restoration is a safe space, and you will find that your children will be engaged when they come. So please send them. Y'all have a great evening. Be sure to tune in to our warrior son, Jahi Jamni Achilles live broadcast. I think he said they'll be on at 7:20. So we want to support our warrior sons. We want to support our young men who have a mission to create a generational vanguard. So please tune in. I thank you all, Sister Donna. I thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your dialogue. Thank you for your input. I'm going to go back and read through the comments. I see one that you said that shows that a teacher really cares and is concerned about the educational development of the child. And that's what we got to get back to. We have to get back to being a village and caring about our children and what they learn. Because believe it or not, although your children might be straight, the children that are not straight can affect your life because the crimes that are being committed, the pastor that was just carjacked and murdered by two 16-year-olds, she was someone's mother, she was someone's daughter, she was someone's grandmother, aunt, uncle, cousin, friend. So just because your child is straight doesn't mean that the ones that aren't straight can affect your life. So I thank you all. Brother Mitchell, thank you for tuning in. Y'all, as Sister Mila said, I do have a YouTube channel, so you can view me on YouTube as well if Facebook is not your thing. Exactly, Sister Donna. If one is left behind, we are all left behind. Say it again. It's like Mama Fanny Lou Hamer said, when I liberate myself, when I liberate others, excuse me, I liberate myself. And as Brother Patrick has said, you can be uh you can look out for yourself and not affect the community. But if you look out for the community, you'll automatically uplift yourself. I say. And so y'all, until next time, until August 29th, if I'm not on sooner, because y'all know that I say we stay busy. But if not sooner, I will see y'all again on August 29th at 6 o'clock. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you all for tuning in. I say.